Welcome back, everyone. If you are looking to cut through the noise and get straight to the absolute core of today's massive tech shifts, well, you're in the exact right place. From a billionaire data leak that is Washington scrambling to a literal tax revolt happening right now in the crypto world, we have a phenomenal lineup to unpack in today's explainer. We are dealing with some incredibly heavy tech crises today. I mean, we're going to examine whether the second largest cryptocurrency network on the planet is somehow actually running out of money, plus how a highly secretive app built for the world's most powerful people basically left its front door wide open. But hey, don't worry. After we navigate these digital dilemmas and some wild space-age bottlenecks, we're going to wrap up our day with some much-needed high-energy gaming escapes.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First up, the Ethereum revolt. Then, the dialogue leak. Third, NASA's trap. Fourth, the RAM monopoly. And finally, gaming escapes.
All right, part one, the Ethereum revolt and the staking tax crisis.
So, a really strange and honestly highly controversial proposal just completely rocked the crypto world. The Ethereum Foundation, the group that helps guide the network's development, recently announced they're facing a massive 40% budget cut. Basically, their operational and developer costs have just ballooned out of control. So, to fund their estimated $100 million annual budget, which they are trying to drop to $60 million, senior developers actually proposed a 10% tax on Ethereum staking rewards. But wait a second. Is the foundation actually going broke? Well, no, not at all. They currently hold over $500 million in Ethereum reserves. And honestly, that massive pool of existing capital is exactly why this whole proposal has struck such a nerve.
Unsurprisingly, the community's reaction has been swift, and it has been furious. A staggering 85% of the Ethereum community fiercely opposes this tax, and you can see why. When you stake your Ethereum, you're locking up your own capital to secure this decentralized network. You are taking on personal financial risk. So, to suddenly be told, hey, you have to hand over 10% of your rewards to a centralized organization, well, it feels like a punishment for keeping the network safe. It completely contradicts the whole underlying philosophy of decentralization. People are loudly demanding the foundation optimize its own massive reserves before taxing the very users who actually secure the blockchain.
Moving right along to part two, the dialogue leak and the billionaire network exposed.
So, Dialogue is this ultra-private, invitation-only social network founded by Peter Thiel, and it's meant exclusively for the global elite. Just days ago, Dialogue sounded the alarm. They claimed they'd been penetrated by sophisticated hackers who stole their highly guarded member data. Sounds like a cyber thriller, right? But the reality is actually far more embarrassing. A deep dive by Wired revealed there was zero hack. None. It was literally just a careless API misconfiguration on their website. Basically, anyone with a super basic HTTP request could just view and download the entire member list. We're talking names, phone numbers, emails, profile pictures, the whole shebang. For a platform boasting maximum security, this was an unbelievably basic rookie error.
Now, you might be wondering, why does this matter to us? Well, think about who is actually exposed here. Over 12,000 elite members. We're talking top Silicon Valley executives, sitting U.S. senators, top-tier venture capitalists, and incredibly powerful security advisors. When a list like this goes public, it completely strips away the veil of privacy for some of the most powerful people on Earth. Knowing exactly who is communicating with whom on a supposedly secret platform, that gives us this unprecedented look into hidden political and economic influence patterns. It literally reveals the quiet networks where big business and major policies might actually be shaped, long before they ever hit the public eye.
Okay, let's shift gears to part 3, NASA's trap and the Artemis dependency.
NASA's Artemis mission has this incredibly ambitious goal to return humans to the moon by 2028. But to actually pull this off, they are relying heavily on SpaceX's Starship. And here is a number that is just jaw-dropping: 15. It takes an estimated 15 consecutive Starship launches just to get a single crew of astronauts to the moon. Why? Well, Starship has to reach Earth orbit and then be refueled multiple times by a whole fleet of other Starships that are basically acting as orbital gas stations before it even has enough energy to head to the lunar surface.
And pulling off 15 rapid-fire launches, that requires absolutely flawless cutting-edge infrastructure. But here's the trap. The Kennedy Space Center is currently operating with decaying Space Shuttle-era gear. They only have 2 suitable launch pads right now. And get this, each pad requires 2 to 3 weeks of repair time after just one single launch. Plus, their fuel capacity is nowhere near enough for this rapid cadence. They desperately need about $2.5 billion for modernization, but they've only been allocated $800 million. Trying to push 15 heavy rocket launches through this narrow, aging bottleneck in a short time frame, it's practically impossible today.
Which brings us to a really sobering point from Dr. Casey Trier, the Chief of Space Policy at the Planetary Society. He put it perfectly, saying, "We depend on SpaceX, but SpaceX itself depends on an unproven technology. This is a dangerous equation for a human mission. Remember, Starship is still very much in its testing phase. We haven't even seen a completely flawless launch and landing cycle yet. So staking human lives on repeating an unproven, intensely complex launch 15 times in a row, it really shows just how fragile our timeline for returning to the moon actually is."
Let's come back down to Earth for part 4, the RAM monopoly and the hardware crisis.
If you've been wondering lately why your tech hardware keeps getting so expensive, well, the core of the problem comes down to a shocking lack of competition. Get this, 96% of the entire global RAM market is controlled by just 3 companies. Samsung sits at 42%, SK Hynix has 31%, and Micron has 23%. Every other company combined makes up a measly 4%. This is a classic textbook monopoly scenario. And it means these 3 giants can basically dictate whatever terms and whatever prices they want to the companies that are actually building our everyday devices.
And the immediate real-world result of that absolute market control, a massive 45% price increase in RAM over just the past 6 months. Now, because setting up a brand new RAM manufacturing facility requires literally billions of dollars in upfront investment, new competitors just aren't entering the market to drive those prices back down. So that 45% spike is hitting device manufacturers incredibly hard, and ultimately, it's draining your wallet.
Just look at Valve, the creators of the Steam Deck. Greg Coomer from Valve laid out the bitter reality of this hardware crisis, saying, "We have no leverage. Either we accept their prices or we won't have any product to sell." Valve was literally told by their suppliers, "Buy at this price, yes or no. And if no, we aren't going to call you back." Because of this total lack of bargaining power, Valve was forced to bump the price of the upcoming Steam machine from $599 up to $699. It's a really harsh reminder of how consolidated power at the very base of the supply chain trickles right down to us, the consumers.
All right, finally, part 5, gaming escapes. Okay, let's take a collective breath here and completely shift gears for a bit of a cool down. We have tackled financial revolts, billionaire data leaks, space traps, and hardware monopolies. It is time to escape into the latest developments in gaming. Microsoft just dropped a brand new report on their Xbox Game Pass metrics, and wow, it is clear this model is utterly transforming the industry. For around $17 a month, players are getting access to hundreds of titles from day one. You don't have to risk $70 up front anymore just to find out if a game is actually worth your time. You can just jump right in, experiment, and play exactly what the rest of the community is obsessing over right now.
And speaking of what everyone's playing this week, taking the top spot is the breathtaking Forza Horizon 6. The brand new Japan map is an absolute stunner. I mean, it lets you drift from the neon-soaked streets of Tokyo all the way up to the gorgeous mountain roads of Mount Fuji. Right behind it is the chaotic, up-to-4-player co-op horror of Escape the Backrooms. We've also got Mixtape, which is this incredible 80s narrative experience with just a killer soundtrack. Then there's Subnautica 2, making huge waves by finally adding co-op to its terrifying underwater survival formula. And rounding out the top hits is the beautiful, nostalgic voxel-style RPG Echo Generation 2. Finally, for fans of classic shooters, Cultic is making its massive console debut on July 23rd. What makes this game so special is the brilliant contrast it strikes. Visually, it's a total love letter to the 90s. Think the low-res, gritty art style of Duke Nukem 3D or Blood. But mechanically, it features deep, incredibly modern, fast-paced tactical action with over 15 unique weapons. It's arriving on PS5, Xbox Series, and, interestingly enough, it was officially announced for the Switch too, which gives us some concrete proof that Nintendo's next-generation console is quietly lining up its launch roster behind the scenes. What a phenomenal mix of stories today, right? We've seen just how dynamic and frankly complex our technological world has become. But it leaves us with a really critical question to chew on. As our tech ambitions scale all the way to the moon, and powerful billionaires hide their networks in plain sight, are we slowly losing control of the very physical and digital monopolies we've built? Think about that as you wrap up your day. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time as we dive into tomorrow's frontiers.